Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on certainly where we are here, a very gloomy, wet and windy Thursday afternoon. You've come along to the webinar, Why You Need a Wintering Tender Plan, and myself, I'll introduce myself, Andrew Watson. I'm the bid consultancy and training manager here. I'm going to try and provide some value across the webinar, and I normally am involved in trying to help our clients be as successful as possible when they are bidding into the public sector. I'll be co-hosting the webinar with my colleague Medea.
Hi everyone, I work in the client relations with Andrew in the bid consultancy department. So usually if you have any questions or queries, I'm usually the first point of contact.
Thanks, Medea. In terms of the format for the webinar, we will spin through some slides about a winter tendering plan, hopefully give you guys some things to think about, some tips and tricks to take away in terms of how best to think about things across the coming weeks and months. And I suppose we well and truly are into the kind of winter festive type period as of now. In terms of the format for the webinar, we'll go through some slides, and also we'll have some time at the end for kind of a little bit of a Q&A as well. You do have the function, the question function within the webinar software. So if you do want to ask us any questions, please do feel free to do them at any point. You don't need to wait until the Q&A section. We might try and pick them up as we're going along. Otherwise, we'll certainly have some time to look at question and answers towards the end of the webinar. Good afternoon. That's very polite. Someone's just said good afternoon. Good afternoon to you all. Good afternoon to everyone. And yeah, hopefully we can provide some value. So again, if you do have questions, please just do feel free to ask them in the chat function, and we will try and pick them up either as we're going through or towards the end of the session. Okay. Now, if you ever had the fortune or misfortune of attending one of our webinars before, you do know we do like to strive for a little bit of interactivity, nothing too strenuous, but I'll just launch a poll just to sort of set the scene, see how we're getting on. So I've launched a poll just now, which is, do you plan out how you will prepare your tender responses? So as a general rule, what do you think, guys? Is this something that you are frequently doing, or you do to some degree? That's quite a kind of catch-all one there, isn't it, in terms of maybe that's you doing it but not super formally. So yeah, it would be really interesting to get the results and kind of get a feel for where we all are there. I will apologize in advance. I think tech might be slightly against me today, and it might be a tiny bit laggy in terms of results coming in terms of how I'm talking through and so on. But yeah, we'll certainly persist. So yeah, thank you. That's yeah, the vast majority of people, and there's a really good number of attendees on the webinar. So you can just run through the responses for that real quick, and we can see if anything we talk over across the course of the webinar helps to shift some of the percentages. So as it stands, 23% say yes, you do plan out how you prepare responses. 14% say no shame on you. 14%, I'm only joking. 18% say we don't actually know where to start, and 45%, so nearly half, say to some degree, which is kind of, I guess, reasonably to be expected. There's varying degrees of how formally we do it, but in the most cases we can see from that we are doing some sort of planning activity. So it's not just completely dive into it and see what happens. What we'll try and do across the course of the webinar is little nudges towards what are the things that we could be doing so that we feel more comfortable saying yes rather than saying to some degree, as well as other points we'll look to cover as well. So hopefully that makes sense. Really do appreciate the little bit of participation there. Nearly everyone's chimed in there. Thank you very much, guys. And yeah, we'll see if that sort of sets the scene, so we can maybe try and push some of the ones up into the next category as we're going through the webinar. Thank you. Let me just check my screen share. Okay, so in terms of what are the objectives that we are looking to cover in the webinar, I can't believe we're talking about the festive period already. My Christmas shopping does not get looked at until December, but I know lots of people, including Medea, would be far more organised than me in this regard. But can we apply some good planning to tenders and tender responses? So how many are really going to be released over the festive period? What do we mean by festive period? Do we have any ideas about which ones specifically or which type of tenders are likely to be released across the period? And especially over this period of time where we know we're going to be resource stretches. You know, we've got Christmas parties to attend. We can't be writing tenders all the time. We're going to have people off on leave. that type of stuff. How do we ensure that we're doing some project planning of our responses? So for the people that were in the yes bracket, how do we ensure we stay in that yes bracket or move into it over a difficult period to do so, i.e. the festive period when resources do tend to be stretched? And how do we manage those across that period to make sure that we're still achieving the things we need to for our business in terms of our tender responses and in terms of this continuing to be a viable route for business for us? So a little bit to get through in this session. I thought it was helpful just for everyone. I think there is a little bit of a lag in my slides coming up, but hopefully it's not too bad. I thought it might just be helpful to set the scene in terms of, well, how many tenders are actually released over the festive period. So, you know, is it something that like really we're going to get into the festive period and then there's absolutely no activity, and this becomes like, you know, once we get into December, we know at that point really we're not going to have too much to do and we can just take our foot off the gas? Or is it just procurement exercises, steam ahead as per usual, regardless of whether it's the festive period or not? And we do have some answers on this, guys. We do have some answers. First of all, just a little bit of a very tiny bit of a recap. When we're talking about the tenders that have to go through our sort of procurement process, and we're talking about low value and high value tenders, and the numbers there are up on screen to know when it falls into a high value category, and based on whether it's a central or local government entity, anything from 25 to 30, 25 or £10,000 has to go through a procurement process, and then these are the thresholds for the kind of upper limits, where it becomes a high value exercise above threshold. Okay, so again, and that has bearings on, you know, kind of what's required of the procurement itself and how that's got to be managed. So just a little bit of a recap there. The normal ones you're looking at are the supplies and service ones, so it's just under 140,000 for central government, or 213,500 for sub-central government. But when it breaches that, it becomes a high value contract, and at that point, it's then you know, we're subject to a little bit more formality in terms of how the procurement is then run. Okay, some data, some information. Okay, so the last slide was obviously showing you what the thresholds were for the split between the high value and low value tenders, and you can see the different lines there that shows you the average in terms of the number of tenders that have been published, and then what impact the festive period has on them. Okay, so that's why it was useful to sort of separate them out based on whether you're looking at primarily looking for low value, primarily looking at high value, or looking at a mixture of both. In terms of the number of opportunities there are, you can see there are lots more low value opportunities that come out than high value. And you can see basically, you know, the line there showing from the end of October through until January, and the line, as you'd expect, week on week is kind of bouncing around the average. What is really, really clear in both the 2019 period and obviously last year is, you know, a really consistent drop off in terms of the number of tenders being published over that festive period. But I think this is the really important point, guys. If you look how late on that drop off then comes, so it's really the week of, in these cases, it's really the week of Christmas, where it sees this really, really big drop down. So it's in the weeks leading up to Christmas, you're not really seeing much of a drop off. You're actually seeing it being a sort of sustainable, sort of steady line, and it's only in that last week before Christmas that you see a drop off. And then, completely as you would expect, a really, really significant drop off in number that have been released, you know, in that interim period between Christmas and New Year. And then you can see how quickly it picks back up, where you're almost back up to speed in terms of numbers by, you know, the sort of first full week of January. So I think it's really important to recognise there is a drop off here, but let's be clear about how compressed a period that drop off in tender publications, how compressed a period where it drops off is. So really you can be saying, well, maybe I'm not expecting very much to come out, you know, in between Christmas and New Year, but apart from that, we've got to be on our game in terms of, you know, really making sure we're still prepped and resourced to do it. And of course, everyone knows the ones that are going to come out in early to mid-December, the points at which you've got to respond to those is going to be early to mid-January. That's typically going to be your cut-off point. We'll just run through that in a little bit more detail in a second. But given that we know there's a load that are coming out across December, and then only this little, this significant drop off over a really small period of time, we know we've got to be equipped for ones to actually work on them across December and into January. So are we really going to be in a position where if we see a tender opportunity in mid-December where we can, adequately and to our best ability respond to that if we're not operating over the festive period? It's going to make it really, really difficult. So really important to emphasize, yes, there is a big drop off, but just how short a period of time that covers. So I think that hopefully sets a little bit of the scene, and I think I can hand over to Medea at this point, and she can run through just a little bit of the detail around what tenders let us be released and how to capture those.
Thank you, Andrew. So there's different ways of how we can sort of predict what contracts are likely to come out. But two of the main ways and easiest ways, I think, is the prior information notices and the contract award notices. So a prior information notice is something the buyer publishes to sort of give an advance warning of a contract that's to be tendered, or to do some market testing, or even to get some sort of industry expertise from suppliers. But usually the pin will say exactly what the buyer wants you to do, whether they want you to respond or pre-register or get in discussion with them, and it'll tell you who to respond to. But most importantly, if a tender is to be released soon, it'll tell you roughly when. So that obviously gives you the perfect advanced warning. And this is also the perfect time to get in touch with the buyer and do your pre-engagement and really find out what they're looking for and how you can get those extra points. The contract award notice is usually published after the contract has been awarded, in the name, I suppose. It usually states the name of the winner, the contract start date, contract value, and also the sort of length of the contract. So from that, you can gather a rough renewal date. Obviously, not all contracts will be renewed. For example, a construction contract for a building extension isn't going to be renewed. When it's done, it's done. But for example, IT services, that's something the buyer will still need when the contract's over. So a good time to get in touch with the buyer is roughly 6 months before the contract is due to expire, because usually the buyer will want a new contract in place before it expires. Next slide, please. Perfect. So here are some ways of how you can make sure you find these upcoming tenders. One of the best ways are tender alerts. So there are free government websites like Find a Tender and Contracts Finder. Find a Tender is for high value notices and Contracts Finder for low value. There are over 500. Sorry, I think my connection is dropping. I'm not sure if you can still hear me, Andrew. I'm really sorry. I'm not sure if I'm still on. I can't really hear anything or see anything.
Yeah, Medea, we can still hear you.
I'm sorry, I'm not really getting anything. Sorry, I'm not getting any picture or sound at this point. I'm not sure. I will try logging off. Sorry, Andrew, if you want to take over for now.
Yeah, can you hear me? Sorry, guys, I'm not quite sure what the technical issue is. Can I check? Yeah, everyone can still hear me. Okay, that's fine. Now, I will carry on, and hopefully Medea can can rejoin us. Now, obviously, in advance of the webinar, we had divided up the slides, so you have to excuse me if I'm kind of working through it as we're talking through. But as Medea was saying there, yeah, really, in terms of trying to make sure that we have the visibility of current and in terms of the planning piece around the festive period, upcoming tenders, there's a variety of routes that we can ensure that we have in place to be able to do that. So Medea talked about there having the for the non-tenders direct subscribers, non-tenders direct members on the call, there are free government websites that give you access to quite a lot, but nowhere near all of the opportunities, and you can go on those government websites and look for free and see what opportunities are there. So Find a Tender and Tenders Contracts Finder. If you wanted a full market coverage, that's what Tenders Direct platform does, and that's what our subscribers will have. I know there's lots of you on the call, but there's lots of non-subscribers as well. We'll talk about it at the end, but we can set you up with a free trial so you can have a look through and get that piece a bit more visibility of what's happening in the market. In terms of the kind of research piece to try and find out, it really is important to try and understand, what opportunities are coming out, and do you have a mechanism in place to do that? Again, we have a tool that does it, but really looking at when contracts are going to expire, having an alert or a visibility of when they are, so you can contact buyers before contracts expire and ask them about their timeline for actually procuring the new version of the contract, so procuring the contract again. So buyers will, they will normally be willing to sort of share that information. They'll have an idea about what their timeline for their procurement is, and they can share that with you, and then you can use that to sort of build, a pipeline of a potential timeline for opportunities, and then that helps you understand how many opportunities are coming up and how well resourced you are to try and meet those. And the last part is similarly related. If maybe it's not a renewal of a contract, but do you have particular authorities that you want to target and engage with to understand when they're going to be procuring for particular requirements? Can you go proactively and try and engage with them, build out from your existing network, and do the old-fashioned things about introducing yourself to people to try and understand kind of what they're looking to procure and when, so you can build up your pipeline and be in better shape for opportunities. These apply, year-round, but specifically it's important to think about them when you're doing when you're going to be under resource strain periods, as you might well be in the festive period. So Medea had done a little bit of research beforehand. Now, obviously, you guys, there's loads of people on the webinar, and you're going to be looking at all sorts of different sectors. Our most popular, our clients are most common looking at things within, IT, healthcare, construction, different kind of consultancy services, etc. All that type of good stuff. So these are just a few examples of bits that have that you're able to find when you start looking around, just to make you aware. So there was the first one is a prior information notice that Medea talked through what that meant. So it's a pre-warning of a very large-scale staffing framework that's going to be published by an NHS foundation, and it's probably going to be released, they're saying, an estimated date, of 9th of January. Not to say that that specific opportunity is going to be suitable for anyone, but it's that there are some ways to get that kind of forewarning around what opportunities are coming when. And likewise, for a supported living one, which is an area that lots of our clients are looking at. Again, it's a forewarning that that's going to be coming up, and then you can start to hopefully try and engage with the buyer, keep in contact with them, work out if that date's going to be adhered to, if it's going to slip. But if you contact them, they'll be able to keep you abreast of information or any changes relating to that. And just as a point, if you're seeing that contracts are out for that you were interested in, that were secured a few years ago, when are they due for renewal? Have they come out yet? If not, are you chasing up with the buyer to understand, well, you've got this contract, it's due for renewal in December 2022. Ideally, we should have seen, we would have expected to see the contract notice for that several months in advance. I'm working with a client just now, and actually the contract commencement for that won't be until 2024, because some things have such long leads. But for most things, it's going to be several months. So is there a question around, has that already come out? If it's getting into the last few months before our contract's due to expire, what's the buyer's plan? Are they going to renew that contract? Is there an extension option for them that they're going to then exercise? Or is it just that they're going to be behind, they're going to have this period where there's a gap? But if you've got visibility of when relevant contracts for you are going to end, you could be pursuing the authority around that opportunity, and then you've got better visibility to again build your pipeline, understand what's coming out. So hopefully the kind of pre-work piece we've talked about there will resonate, and hopefully that's something you can do or do more of. And again, fitting that in with the idea of, there are contracts that are going to come out over December and January, and we need to be best prepared for them as we can. Okay, I think Medea's having some technical issues, so I'll carry on. Okay. Next section then, in terms of how do we go about managing responses with those reduced. Okay, there's a very long question which I'll try and come to the end. I will try and pick up some questions. So managing responses with reduced resourcing levels. So very quickly, we need to be clear on when we are pursuing opportunities, especially if we think about we're going to have a finite amount of resource within our organisation to actually pursue them. So what's a really important part of that? Well, it's about deciding which opportunities we should bid for. So very, very basic questions to help support us with this. And again, you have to look at these within the context of kind of where you sit, okay? Within the context of it's mid to late December, we've got, most of the sales team, etc., are on holiday over the festive period. It's due in early January. Is that realistic, etc.? So you look at it through the lens of where you are at that particular point in time. Very fundamental questions. When we want to win it, can we meet requirements bid? Can we deliver? Can we realistically win it? So again, that question should be seen through the lens of what is our resourcing available to put this together over this period of time, because that plays an important part into the, can we realistically win this opportunity? So do think about that as part of the overall assessment, and that becomes, the more resource stretched we are, then the more that becomes relevant. We need to think about, is it the same as normal, or do we have reduced capacity? Do we have people off, etc.? Who will be writing, organising and managing the bid? So do we have those people? Are the people that would usually be responsible for those type of activities, are they available over the festive period, or no, or they won't be? And do we have substitute or equivalent resources that we can use instead? Are all the people who are going to be involved, are they aware of their involvement, and do they have that capacity to support? Are we attributing big chunks of work to people that are going to be off the entire period over the sort of festive period? When we're talking about constructing bid responses, the very minimum time requirements would be 1 day for every sort of 1,000 to 1,500 words of narrative that we have to draft within a response, plus several days for understanding the documents, reviewing drafts, improving, etc., checking with different people in our organisation. So we know that even relatively small tenders are a significant undertaking. Do we have the resources in place to be able to do that? Do we have this capacity, and especially do we have this capacity over the festive period? So in terms of, I think we've touched on a lot of the points here previous, but in terms of allocating those resources, is it the people who are usually involved, are they still available? Do they have capacity on top of normal activity and on top of festive gaps, festive holidays, etc.? Are there different subject matter experts that we know are going to have to contribute substantially to the submission, and what's their availability look like? Has everyone got the kind of awareness? We're setting up a plan so that everyone's got the awareness of the role and what's expected of them. And in terms of preparing for reduced resources, well, the first thing we need to do is understand who will be off and when. I'll talk about this a little bit more in terms of project planning. Understand that we've got critical business to hand. Have we asked subject matter experts to provide knowledge in advance, for example, if we know they're going to be off? Well, that's kind of jumping ahead a little bit. And are we working to this effectively, like truncated, shortened deadline, because we know we do have people off that are going to normally contribute, and are we in a position to set sort of milestones effective to kind of cover this off? So just to dive into this in a little bit more detail, in terms of looking at project planning and understanding the timelines. Now we're looking at this in terms of specifically around what are the issues or concerns we have over the festive period, which is fundamentally a resourcing strain. But are we applying the type of project management approaches? Are we applying them whenever we're doing submissions to get kind of good results and to make it a kind of managed and orderly process? So it applies specifically within festive, but broader, it applies as well. And remember, when we did the poll at the start, it was that only the 22% of people that said yes, we do that kind of fairly rigorously, and it was, therefore more than 3/4 of people that said either we don't do it or we don't do it fully. So these are some of the things that we'll talk about, some of the things that we need to be having in place so that we're into a place where we're saying yes, we do this more properly. Just in terms of timelines, I've touched on this before, but when it's an open procedure, so all low value contracts are going to be run through open procedures. Everything's done in one stage, and it's usually open for 30 days with the odd exception. It can be longer, and for critical things they can reduce it, but basically you're going to have a month to complete it. And a restricted procedure where it's a high value one, this is an option for procurement organizations to run their procurements through restricted procedure, where they do one stage to eliminate a lot of the candidates and meet a minimum standard, and then only those candidates are carried through to a next stage. From a supplier point of view, a restricted procedure, you're typically going to get a month to respond to the first stage, and then if you're successful, a month to respond to the second stage. So just bearing in mind those type of timescales that we're typically going to have, but whenever you're looking to apply for an opportunity, it's going to be really clear what time frame you're operating against in terms of when the deadline for completion is, and you work back from that point, allowing some building in some slack. So let's think about this from a really sort of fundamental level in terms of thinking. We've got this kind of discrete project, the standalone project that we have to manage. What are the things that we need to think about to make this project run well, and the project being obviously the tender response. So are we clear on what are all the tasks that we need to do to complete it? Are we clear on what resources we think will be required to complete them? Are we clear on what sequence the tasks are to be carried out in? So are there dependencies? Are there things that we can only do once other things are done? Are there lots of tasks that can be done at standalone? It's just a question of assigning a resource to them. How much time do we have overall, and how are we going to manage this? So these are the absolute sort of fundamental questions that we need to be asking to then start thinking about how do we plan out our approach to our responses to make them the best as possible. I know some people that I've spoken with in the past, and sometimes at the smaller end, you might be thinking, I just need to write the responses. I don't need to think about this stuff. And sometimes you will be able to kind of muddle through and come to an answer or a submission that is worth submitting without doing any of this stuff. The larger the projects that you get involved in, the larger the tender responses, the less likely that is to happen. And even in small projects, if you do no planning and just sit down and try to write out the answers without thinking about the resourcing, the people involved, how much time it might take, what bits of information you might need, there's just no way it's going to be optimal in terms of your results. And remember, it's a competitive process. If it's not optimal, the prospects of being successful are much reduced. So in terms of just to break it out a little bit, go a little bit more granular, let's talk about what are the different tasks that I'm going to have I'm going to have to think about or include, and then like build in time to complete those tasks. I'm going to have to spend some time capturing all of the requirements from all the documentation that's been released. I'm going to have to potentially spend some time on solution design. Now, this does vary based on how bespoke your offering will be. So if you're selling, if you're delivering or supplying, a very sort of standard product, maybe there's less time on solution design. Whereas if you're having to build a bespoke solution for something in services, then that's going to be much more complicated. But either way, you have to think about, have we spent some time looking at the solution design, gathering the required documents such as policies and procedures, evidence base, etc. Have we allowed some time for that we might need? We're going to have to complete a selection questionnaire or the PQQ, so a section of the documents that we have to complete that's more of a sort of standard answer, but that still needs to be completed, and we have to capture how much time and who's going to be allocated to do that. The vast majority of the focus and the time is going to be around constructing responses to quality questions, and we can break that down into stages. So what's our overall strategy? What are the themes that we're looking to highlight across all our answers? We need to spend some time thinking about that. We need to spend some time planning out end-to-end across all of the different answers. We need to spend some time doing first drafts. We need to spend some time reviewing, getting other people to review, doing those second drafts, potentially then third drafts, etc. and we'll need to also spend some time developing and capturing our commercial response. So what does that look like? Does that feed into our strategy? Is going to feed off our solution design for sure. So are we capturing all these as discrete tasks to then build into basically like a project plan, a project outline, so that we know which tasks are dependent on which, who's going to be responsible for them, how long we think each of these will take, and how that fits in against the available timeline. I do have a really simple kind of Gantt chart Excel that that I've used in the past and can be modified and adjusted, but it's a really simple way for sort of smaller scale projects to see some of the things I've talked about, to add in those lines and then to see how long they're going to take, working back from a deadline and so on. If anyone would like me to share that template with them, do just let me know either in the chat function, or you can drop an email to the contact that I'll bring up at the end of the webinar as well, and we can go through that too. Okay, whistle-stop tour then. That was through winter tendering plan and planning for tenders more broadly than that. So hopefully that should be a big help, or at least some help to people. I think some of it will feel like more of a recap for some guys, and others it will be very, very new. But hopefully it's getting you thinking about, really, even with very small projects, it's really about doing that. What pre-work can I do? Can I have a pipeline? Can I understand when opportunities are coming? And can I plan and resource to make sure I've got a good opportunity and I know how much work's involved in producing the responses to the highest quality standard? So there are some questions. There are some questions up on the screen there that came in at registration, but let me just see if the tech is going to allow me. Then I'm going to look and see if I can do some of the questions that have come in live, if we've got any good ones. Let me just bring this up. So I will open this up and read the question. I am a sole trader, and this is quite the question. I am a sole trader and I have quite recently started to apply for tenders. I have had some success, which is great, but at least 4 times in the last month. Once the tender window has closed, the organisation has withdrawn the contract. This is really frustrating, as they are all very time consuming for all organisations, but especially for very small ones. Is there anything Proactis can do as an organisation to check in with commissioning organisations to try and prevent this happening? It's a really good question. It's a really fair question, but the long and the short of it is no, unfortunately not. So our role, so Proactis, as you might be aware, we actually do provide the procurement platform for lots of public sector procurements that are carried out within the UK. There are, unfortunately, from our point of view, literally several dozen different providers who provide this software for the buying authority to run their procurement through. But essentially, we are providing, that part of the business is providing a platform for that organization to run their procurement, but it has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not they take a kind of business decision, and whatever reasons behind that might be for choosing to withdraw the contract. So even for the ones where we are providing that platform, in essence, we are just a provider of a service to that organization, and we don't have any sway or any ability to influence whether or not they do pull procurements. What I would say specifically is you've been very unlucky for a procurement to be pulled 4 times, for procurements to be pulled 4 times. I don't know how many you've applied for, but unless it's literally hundreds, that's very, very unlucky. So I'm trying to think, we've supported on dozens of, clearly hundreds of procurements across the last few years since I've been in post. And I think I've maybe only been involved in maybe, I'm going to say 3 or 4 maybe, that have actually then been withdrawn after people have submitted. So I totally understand your pain. It's very frustrating, but at the same time, it's really, really, you've been really unlucky to have that happen to you on just so many occasions. So yeah, I would persevere. I wouldn't abandon it as a route because of that. I do get that it's really time pressure to respond to them, and then when you feel like there's an opportunity where it's just been withdrawn. I suppose you kind of have to group it into the same bucket as ones that you apply for but were not successful in securing. Now, I know that seems a bit almost counterintuitive, but you go, well, even accounting for the odd one where they just withdraw it, I still need a win rate of X for this to be a viable approach. And that just has to be seen as sort of noise or collateral when that happens. So yeah, I really get it's frustrating, but it shouldn't happen that frequently. And yeah, I hope it doesn't happen in the future. Okay, if there's any more questions people want to ask live, just do fire them in. I can take a couple more. Let me just run through a couple of the ones that are on the screen because we thought they were quite useful to flag as well. What would you suggest a young practice can do to win tenders? Okay, so if you're, when you say young practice, I mean, it's obviously specific to the type of sector you're in, but a newer organization. So it's difficult generally for brand new organizations to win public sector work. It's not necessarily absolutely impossible, but for some sectors it is next to impossible, because what the public sector are looking to do is ensure they appoint the right supplier to be awarded the contract. To do that, what they're looking for is a good body of evidence to confirm to them that the supplier they're going to choose is very suitable, or the most suitable candidate, the most suitable supplier to carry out that body of work. If you don't have a track record, it's very difficult for them to have that assurance. So that's why it's required. What you can do is make sure that you have the business that you have secured, if you're relatively young, is, make sure you have the ability to reference that. So are you really clear on you've got you can reference the contracts that you do have, you've got them written up as case studies, and you've got this base that you can reference against. So that would be like an important point. The other thing to bear in mind with that is to be really selective about the opportunities you choose for. So if you are younger and you don't have that, just broad range of experience, let's be really specific about which opportunities we choose to pursue, so that we have the best chance of securing them. So is it a really good match based on the experience you do have? Is it a really good match for you then to be able to sort of match up against the requirements for that particular contract? And be really clear that you have looked at what the minimum requirements are if you're newer, and make sure that you do meet all those minimum requirements in terms of whatever it says about experience, about having specific skills, or being of a specific turnover. So do not waste time applying for opportunities which you don't match up well against, because you won't be successful. And I have at various points in the past had to give that information or give that advice to people who are really eager to pursue opportunities, but let's make sure that they're viable ones, so that you don't feel like you're wasting time. Is a company required to be registered with regulated bodies before tendering, e.g. registration with CQC? So again, obviously it's really sort of service specific or sector specific. So for example, there will be lots of things if you wanted to be providing healthcare of a particular discipline that would require you to be CQC registered. If CQC registration is a specific requirement for the tender, it will be explicitly stated, as will other requirements. So if you need to have a particular level of accreditation related to your industry, then that will be made explicit in the tender document, and you can then verify against that and make an informed decision as to whether or not you pursue opportunities. So do check, and when you get faster at verifying opportunities with experience, you'll be able to spin through tender documentation and really capture whether or not you think you can you meet those minimum requirements, and so as not to waste any more time before pursuing. Next question: how to spot flags that suggest it's not worth progressing? The way that question is worded is kind of like almost where you feel it may be that it's earmarked for someone else. So this is a question that comes up a little, reasonably frequently. it tends to be more relevant in private sector proposals, putting them together, where you may get the feeling that someone's doing some sort of like benchmarking or you know, just looking for to have a proposal to drive down prices from an existing supplier. There shouldn't really be anything within a public sector tender to say, you know, that it's not going to go ahead, or you know, that there's a preferred supplier that's going to be given it regardless of what else. That stuff shouldn't happen, because it's supposed to be a fair and transparent process. In terms of things that's not worth progressing, excuse me, in terms of things not worth progressing, it would be more around, I don't meet the minimum requirements. Actually, my organisation's experience or skill set doesn't match up that well with the solution requirement from the organisation. Things like that, or we don't feel like we can get inside the commercial envelope if there's a ceiling price and you don't feel, because of your cost structure, that you can get under that. These are all reasons why you would then say this isn't worth pursuing. This should come out in our go no go process. So that can happen, but it should be more stuff around that rather than, oh, by the way, we've got a concern about whether this is a genuine opportunity or not. And just lastly, the last question up there: different people have different writing styles. Is it always best to use just to have one person drafting the full bid? It's a good question. After a point, in terms of scale, it can be done. It can be impossible to have that be the case. So I'm working on a project currently, and you know, there's absolutely no way that one person could have drafted all the answers, because of the sheer volume of responses that are required. You can try and manage it a little bit. I think sometimes if it's for smaller ones, if you have other people support with information and one person do the kind of management and the writing, that can work really nicely. After a point, in terms of scale, it can become a little bit more difficult. If you're going to have multiple contributors write answers, really what you want to be doing is having some form of style guidance. So what kind of naming conventions do you want to be consistent? Have you issued some guidance around, you know, how formal do we want our tone to be? Are there particular words we would use as opposed to other ones? So there's lots of things like that that we can try and have as basically some form of a style guide created, and that can be shared with writing contributors, so that they, you know, at the very least have that information. So there will be some consistency in terms of writing approach. Any other guidance you want to offer can be useful as well in terms of what sort of style you want to present. So you can try and share that information to get it more sort of standardized across the piece, because you're right, if you have multiple people writing and they don't have any guidance and they're not talking to each other, then they will have different writing styles, and that will flag up across the submission, and it is better for it to be consistent. So it's a good question. Okay, I think we're basically at the end of time. Thank you very much. Just wanted to flag a few different things. We talked earlier on about you know, trying to capture. One of the things about ensuring we've got access to all of the opportunities to make sure we're pursuing the best ones. I know a lot of you guys on the call are Tenders Direct subscribers already, and thank you very much for your continued custom. For anyone that's not, we do offer a completely free, no obligation 14-day trial for Tenders Direct. You go on our website, you can sign up for it, and then that means you can get that market visibility. You can see all of the opportunities that are live, all of the opportunities for your categories, the sort of things you'd be interested in, you know, that have come up in the past, who's been awarded them, when contracts are going to expire. It will give you that kind of full market picture to understand how much of that you're seeing currently, and whether or not it's something that you need to have full visibility of to make the best decisions about which opportunities to pursue. So if you're not a member, I would suggest very much to sign up for the 14-day free trial. I've put the links for our website there in terms of some resources. We've got loads of other webinars. Some of them are even, would you believe, free of technical difficulties, as we've been plagued with in this one. And we've also got fabulous training courses that you can book on our website as well. Those are CPD accredited, really good Trustpilot scores for those. And we've also got lots of resources you can go on for free as well. So loads of stuff there, guys. Do go and have a look. Last but not least, wanted to flag our email with support@tendersdirect.co.uk and our telephone number. If there's anything that you want to ask but not in this forum, you want to ask myself and Medea when she's back online, back working again, please do reach out, get in contact with us, and we can go through any questions or issues or anything like that. We offer like free half-hour basically bid support sessions, whether you're a customer or not. We can do a little session with you and work out what your specific issues are and try and provide some support and guidance to get you on the best path possible. So we will we are able to do that. If you'd like one of those sessions, do just reach out either in the chat or by dropping us an email, and we can do that. We'll also reach out to everyone, just gather some feedback relating to the webinar and touch base with you there. So thanks very much. One of the last questions, was there a free resource that was going to be provided for attending today's webinar? Yes, it's the Gantt chart template. So that's what I'll send over. So I'll send that over to you, and anyone else that wants that, like I say, drop it in the chat or drop us an email. Anyone's got any follow-up questions, any issues, anything they want to discuss in a bit more detail, like I say, please do reach out to us, and we will be in contact just to touch base with you, check everyone's okay, how you got on with the webinar, and if there's anything else that we can help you with. Sorry again about the technical difficulties. We're going to get onto the specific broadband providers, get this stuff organised. Thank you for your patience for that. Thank you for your attendance. Really do appreciate giving up your time. I hope everyone can take something for it. And if I don't see you or speak to you beforehand, I can't believe I'm saying this, have a lovely festive period. And yeah, maybe we'll speak in the new year. But thanks again for your attendance and your time.